Children, our first lesson from the Lord's Word today comes from the second book of Kings, chapter 4, and it's a story about a woman and her two sons, and it's a story about vessels. And listen to what the prophet tells her about vessels. A certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, saying, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared Jehovah. And the creditor is coming to take my two sons to be his slaves." So Elisha said to her, "What shall I do for you?" And she said, "Your maidservant has nothing in the house but a jar of oil." So children, nothing in the house, she said, except for a jar of oil. That's all she had. Then Elisha said, "Go, borrow vessels from everywhere, from all your neighbors, empty vessels, do not gather just a few. And when you have come in, you shall shut the door behind you and your sons, and then pour into all those vessels and set aside the full ones." So she went from him and shut the door behind her and her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured the oil out. Now it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said to her son, "Bring me another vessel." And he said to her, "There is not another vessel." So the oil ceased. Then she came and told the man of God, and he said, "Go sell the oil and pay your debt, and you and your sons live on the rest." Amen. Now we have a short lesson from the Gospel of Mark, where again the idea is, in the story we just read, it was about pouring oil into a vessel. And in this story, the person is the vessel. The Lord tells us something about stuff that flows into us. And when Jesus had called the multitude to himself, he said to them, "Hear me, everyone, and understand. There is nothing that enters a man from outside which can defile him. But the things which come out of him, those are the things that defile a man. For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts and adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lewdness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, and foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile a man." Amen. So children, in our story today, it was a very sad story. There was this woman, she had lost her husband, who was one of the prophets, one of the sons of the prophets. And in those days, it was very sad because she had no way of making money and she was poor. And the only thing she had that was worth anything was a little jar of oil. And they used oil in those times, sometimes to light lamps. They would use oil for baking, to be able to make bread. And it was a valuable commodity, but that's all she had. And so some people she owed money to were going to come and they were going to take her sons away from her. She was sad about that and she didn't know what to do. And Elisha told her to go gather vessels. She said, "You and your sons go gather vessels." And it made a point, it said, don't gather just a few, gather lots. Lots and lots of vessels. So you can picture her sons going out. They come running back. A vessel is anything that will hold something. So these are different shaped vessels, and bring them back. And it said every vessel that they had, she could pour oil in out of this little jar. And it said it would keep pouring until it was full. And then when that vessel was full, she could continue pouring out of this little jar more oil into another vessel, and it would fill that one up. And she could set that aside, and her sons would bring her more vessels, and she would keep pouring in the oil. Vessel after vessel, this happened, and she just kept filling up all these vessels with valuable oil, one after the other, until it said she asked her sons, "Hand me another vessel." And there was no more. And it said once there were no more vessels, the oil stopped flowing out of the little jar that she had. But she was able to take now all these full vessels filled with oil, valuable oil, sell it, and pay off the creditor and be able to keep her sons. This is telling us something so important, children. In the Word, anytime you hear about oil, it is talking about the Lord's love. This oil has a beautiful golden color, and it's a symbol of how much the Lord loves you and wants to fill you with His love. And you are a vessel. You are a vessel. And in fact, we're told that you become a vessel that is receptive to the Lord's love when you learn His truth. Every truth you learn from the Lord's Word. If you learned the story about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and everything that went on there, that's a truth that is a vessel that will hold the Lord's love. He wants you to know Him and understand Him. If you've learned a truth about mighty Samson in the Word, that's a truth that tells you about the Lord's strength and power over the hells. And when you know that, the Lord can pour more of His love into your heart. Every single truth that you learn from the Lord's Word is a vessel. It's a vessel designed specifically for holding the Lord's love. And that's why He told him, don't go gather just a few vessels. He said, gather as many as you can. Because every vessel, every truth that you gather from the Lord's Word is one more truth where the Lord can just fill your heart with His love. It's a beautiful story about that. And it has everything to do with what you end up really being like in heaven. Our second lesson, the Lord said that it's not what flows into you alone that determines who you are, it's what flows out of you. So, if you picture yourself being a vessel, and you have gone to the Lord's Word, you've learned His truths, and the Lord has filled you with His love. He's filled you with His love. Truth is nothing but a tool to teach you how the Lord wants you to live and love. And when He's filled you with His love, He doesn't want you to keep that inside you and not share it with anybody else. If we're selfish, if we don't care about other people, we only look to ourselves, then that selfishness corrupts everything inside us. And then it says, out of the heart of man alone proceeds all kinds of wicked things. But we have a choice to make. By our accounts, we will be justified, and by our accounts, we will be condemned. It depends on what you do with the Lord's love that He gives you. If you take now this love that He's given you, you've learned the truth, the Lord's poured His love into your heart, and then you go and share that with other people, then you will be justified by the good deeds that you do to others. So just remember this lesson from the Lord's Word about vessels, and think of yourself, children, you are a vessel. You've been created a vessel to receive love from the Lord, and He tells you how to receive that love. Most specifically, He tells you, go to His Word, learn my truth, and every truth you learn about me will allow me to pour more of my love into your heart. And then he asks us to go and share that love with others in a life of charity. Amen.